When arriving to the ideal location, Gribble could hear Chief of Police Baal Kethus was mid-questioning why the Sliverfell family had not paid to bypass the waiting list for a resurrectionist for Gikarin. He found it odd since the Sliverfells are a well-known platinum family, and letting her body rot for a week after the first failed resurrection attempt seemed fucked up. Butrin Blazonfoot clarified that Gikarin was only a Sliverfell by marriage to an incompetent grandson heir that often embarrassed the family. Therefore, she is as distant from them as possible, while still holding the family name. Hence, why Gikarin was working in Zambieu, trying to build her philanthropy portfolio and make up for her husband's shortcomings in the eyes of his family. Butrin had hired her as a favor to her father, who he had grew up with. The Sliverfell family is only taking Gikarin's murder as seriously as they are, due to knowing of the documentaries being filmed, which will clearly draw attention to this event. Sadly, the family's concern for her is mostly a second thought. Agenda Item 2.5. Butrin asked Bahal about the officer's progress in teleporting Gikarin's belongings to her father's mansion in Stillcrest. Bahal confirmed that the task was complete by cops not long ago, but a concerned Looseberg requested more specifics. It turns out that the servant contracts were in Gikarin's suite awaiting until security updates were completed at the secretarial building. This meant that all the contracts were also sent to her father's mansion in Stillcrest. Butrin screeched like a mortified schoolgirl, causing both Looseberg and Bahal to startle in their seats. Butrin had agreed to split the cost of a portal with Miss Sliverfell's father to send her belongings, and Butrin either cannot afford, or extremely doesn't want to shell out for, another portal to get the contracts back. Butrin began to hyperventilate, while Looseberg reassured him that he would come up with a solution by the end of the week. The fact that the party now had Gikarin's address from the photograph found in her room could be helpful in the future. We shall see how things go. Agenda Item 3. Ball confronts Looseberg on the firing of Officer Orion despite his written incident report regarding the North Pole. Looseberg waves his hand dismissively, stating while the media is here, it'd be extra unsavory to have the officers viewed as incompetent. Ball seems bothered at first, but then concedes his point. Agenda Item 4. Butrin and Looseberg agree to lay off 2/3 of the workers employed at the North Pole. In regards to Gregis and Rahana, Looseberg strongly urged Butrin take the opportunity to lay them off too, in case they really are tainted. Bahal disagreed, stating that it just looked more fishy, and those two are considered the quote, sunshine and moonshine of Zambieu, end quote. It might drop morale and productivity too. Looseberg pressed harder, stating that it'd make the Sliverfell family happier, and Ball countered with Butrin's earlier explanation that they don't actually care for Gikarin. So long as the Elandrin Luthien Moonsworn is brought down, it shouldn't matter. Butrin grew aggravated at their squabbling and decided to keep them both for now, and worry about firing them when it's closer to the Sliverfells arriving for court. In the meantime, they agreed to offer Gregis a job working in the dining hall where people seeing him daily will cheer them up. Rahana can take a job as a personal housekeeper to the media for the remainder of their stay, and hopefully that will boost the image of the Zambieu. Or they can simply leave. But the three at the table chuckled, knowing no one would do that, as it's a death sentence without a caravan since Zambieu is located between two monster nests. Agenda Item 5. Discussing the relationship between Acrimon Diamante and Luthien Moonsworn. By this point in the meeting, Butrin struggles to contain his voice and is just in non-stop yelling, spitting, in a throe of panic. Gribble and Tawiti were probably hearing the echo in the vent and flinching, slightly tormented. Looseberg is good at keeping his composure, but Ball looks like he wants to choke on glass and end it all by this point in the meeting. Rubbing his temples, Ball recounts that to the best of his knowledge, the first interaction Acrimon had with Lux was at the infirmary after the annual champion fights. But as Ball recalled this, he had an off-topic epiphany, stating that during the fight, someone tried to shoot fire at him, which hasn't happened before during previous annual fights. The one was with Thotham, another roommate from the Trouble Group, and someone lit the North Pole on fire. They had assumed Rildilga despite having no evidence. But the fire started after Lux was detained, and it so happens there's a goblin roommate of theirs also in for arson charges. I imagine hearing leadership recount this gave Gribble a shit-eating grin. The trio at the table agreed. Gribble was likely the actual culprit of both fires, though lacked anything concrete. And the sandstorm was likely to blow away more evidence, lucky for Lux and Gribble. Agenda Item 5 is paused for a spontaneous Item 6. Looseberg posits that it's better things worked out this way. Rildilga was detained due to being caught with strike paraphernalia, after Gribble and Luck's name dropped her as the source of angst against the anti-bullying campaign, meaning Rildilga would have only stayed in detention for a week. But by pinning the North Pole arson charges on her, and knowing she can't afford her bail, means even if she's innocent, she'll be locked up a lot longer and can't help support the strike. They speak of how Rildilga was the second ringleader of the servant miners here, able to hook in people that found Jarvis to be too goody two-shoes. Taking her out of the picture helps keep a third the likely strikers' morale down and less likely to show up, and crushing her spirits to not be there helping her fellow servants after all that hard work. Hopefully it teaches her a lesson. Baal calls attention to the fact they have trailed off topic too long and get back to discussing Acrimon and Lux. Back to agenda item 5. Baal finishes sharing his knowledge, saying he only knows that Acrimon mentioned bumping into the cleric, Thotham, the other morning when Boutron Blazenfoot came down with heat stroke. Something Boutron immediately starts yelling about and swearing Acrimon made the whole thing up, but Baal contests he witnessed it too. Boutron, awash with emotions and distress, insisting he has no memory of any of that craziness, and that he's got to remember to fire the mail lady for letting him sign out his package while he was under the influence of heat stroke, and now he can't find where he put it. He still has nightmares of the Harengun's elephant mutated nose. Baal, again, with more frustration in his tone, states they need to get back on topic, and Loosberg coughs to remind him to keep his cool. Back to agenda item 5 again. Paul recites the events between Acrimon and Lux at the detention center. He actually listened into the whole thing around the corner, of which now Gribble and Tawiti are aware Acrimon paid Lux's bail and claimed her mother changed his life, and that Acrimon knows Lux's mother is dead. The leadership trio feels confused on what to make of this. Loosberg expresses concern that the government may have actually hired him to investigate Zombu, if what Thotham said this morning at the podium was true about receiving Miss Sliverfell's diary entry from an anonymous government agent. But Blazenfoot very quickly rejects that, stating, quote, "My second cousin is the Emperor, and Acrimon is his top medical researcher and Fey specialist that works directly under his orders. I know for a fact Emperor Flintstrike has nothing to do with this, and as soon as the media is gone, I will be reaching out to him to inquire about where Acrimon's loyalties lie. I'd rather not draw attention to this fact while the media is still here, and with the Sliverfells on their way, especially since it sounds like this was a personally motivated decision, stemming from simply Acrimon having known Luthien's mother." End quote. Agenda item 5.5. Ball and Loosberg seem to freeze in time for a moment and tilt their heads, stressed in unison. Ball clenches at his pen and asks, quote, "What do you mean he's the top medical researcher of the Fae for the Empire? I thought he was just a normal government doctor." End quote. Before Boutron can answer, Loosberg also follows up with, quote, "What on Gikarin was someone like Acrimon doing here? I thought his interest in the Feywild was just a hobby, much like myself. We live in a desert of the common realm with a bunch of criminals with very few Fey residents." End quote. From Boutron's face, Gribble could tell Blazenfoot looked as if he made a big mistake and was now inwardly, instead of outwardly, panicking. Boutron Blazenfoot ultimately waves it off just as dismissively as he does so defensively, stating, "Don't worry about it. It's business owner bureaucracy stuff. I don't remember the details, so I'll follow up on that when I call my cousin. It's getting late. We need to move on with the agenda. Come on, let's hurry it up already." Ball and Loosberg readjust in their seats skeptically and uncomfortably. They look as if this point is really biting them. But the meeting moves on. Technically, agenda item 7. Since everyone is back to work tomorrow, and there is a chance a strike might be happening, the leadership trio agrees none of the members of your party should be assigned to mining work since it might get closed off. Loosberg proposes a divide and conquer strategy for your work assignments, and further adds Gregis should be demoted from being your mentor, just in case. Baal and Boutron concur, the former asking if any officers in the room would like to volunteer to be the mentor of a bunch of nutjobs. At first, no one raises their hand, but after Boutron offers a salary bonus of 10 gold a month, one officer hesitantly raises his hand. He'll be in charge of assuring that all of you make it to your work assignments first thing in the morning. This leadership trio came up with quite the petty arrangement for you all. Agenda item 8. Boutron Blazenfoot moves on to ask what to do about the strike. He states they have to appear as if they are sincerely trying to be respectful and considerate. Baal scoffs at this, replying with, quote, You just held a huge banquet, gave everyone a paid day off, discharged a servant's debt, and gave out all kinds of free shit. Now an admin is dead. At this rate, the conservative media is going to say you spoiled them rotten. The liberal media will say the same thing, but nicer with some consideration for you. And the workers' media, which is mostly ignored anyway, they're going to hate you just for fucking owning the place. You really don't need to be playing it nice anymore. We look weak and incapable at this point." End quote. Loosberg enthusiastically agrees with Ball, but Boutrin persists, stating the following: "My vision for Zambu is that people find this place to be like a second home away from home, and to be more than content to make money for me. I don't want people feeling desperate to leave. That hurts productivity and causes the situation we have found ourselves in. I was, and still am, on board for the anti-bullying campaign. It has enriched me greatly, but if we don't want people poking their heads in and opening cans of worms, then we need to stop with the hard crackdowns and menacing announcements. It's way too intense, and causing people to want to fight back. As you can clearly fucking see, we need to seem cooperative and sympathetic as possible, without looking like we're totally bending over and presenting our asses either." End quote. Ball sighs in frustration, sarcastically stating, "Good luck with that." Then Loosberg pitches an idea of paying someone off, or just claiming they received an anonymous report from someone, stating that Jarvis, Cormac, and Hadul are showing signs of the desert's delirium and so need to be detained for evaluation. But Boutrin interrupts, completely loathing the idea. He doesn't want to add any credence to the desert's delirium being a real thing, especially not in front of the media. Ball, very exasperated by now, tries to plead by reminding Blazenfoot that an officer has already stripped naked and threw himself in the canal, declaring, "The Greater Mother is coming," right in front of the media. Boutrin slams his fists down, rattling the coffee mugs and materials on the table. Frothing spit from the mouth, he lashes out at Ball for his disrespect when he should be simply saying, "Yes, sir," to his orders. Boutrin throws the papers aside, states he's going to bed and expects a better solution by tomorrow morning. The chair squeaks against the carpet as Boutrin gets up and storms out of the room. And it's soon after this that Lux almost bumps into Boutrin Blazenfoot in the stairwell, and Gribble shrinks Tawitti's spirit into a fraction, telling her to be useful for once, and go alert the party. After waiting a few minutes, Loosberg orders officers that are not in the GMB, police unit, to please dismiss themselves from the conference room. One officer hesitates but begins to leave, and Ball catches the officer's arm, addressing him by name, saying, quote, "Officer Raywong, where are you going?" It's now obvious to Gribble and Tawitti that the officer that volunteered earlier to be the party's new mentor is this guy, which is great news, since this is actually a Rixian in his new disguise. But he blundered here, and responded to Ball nervously with, I need to use the bathroom." Loosberg chimes in, asking Officer Raywong to hold his bladder for a while longer, as Loosberg has a big announcement for the GMB police unit. Oryxian awkwardly makes his way back to stand at the wall, giving a subtle sigh of relief. The atmosphere seems to take a darker shift in the room suddenly, as Loosberg drops his mask of professionality. Uh-oh.